Thank you very much for that introduction. It's very kind, and thank you firstly for putting on the event and for giving us the opportunity to speak here today. And of course, a big thank you to everybody that's in the audience giving up their time to listen to our story. So we are Arovella Therapeutics. We're a biotechnology company listed on the ASX with the ticker ALA. I'll skip over the disclaimer. And just to give you a bit more context on what really drives us as a business. So we are, as I said, a biotechnology company. We work with groundbreaking and really cutting-edge therapies, mainly to cure a disease that we all know well, cancer. And we're led by a series of guiding principles. The first is we're very patient-centric. They're our consumer. We're very data-driven in how we make our decisions and milestone-focused. We act with accountability, integrity, and honesty. And particularly for the arena of drug development, we are incredibly persistent and never give up because it is a challenging industry with a lot of knocks. And I wanted to quickly touch on some of the key points of our company before we go into the deeper dive and talk through them as we move. So for our company, we already partner with world-leading research institutes. Our main platform, the iNKT cell therapy, was licensed from Imperial College London. It's a top 10 university worldwide. And our second major asset, we licensed from the MD Anderson Cancer Centre, which is, if not the best, one of the best cancer centres globally. So with those two acquisitions, we have a platform technology that allows us to have two targets to cancer, target a range of cancers, including blood cancers and potentially solid tumours. And in terms of our team, we have a lot of experience sourcing, evaluating and acquiring new technologies, and that's something we'll continue to do to find new things that align with our strategy in the pursuit of tackling cancer. And our team is certainly world-class. The last 4 recruits are all based in North America, where a lot of the talent resides, and that's something we're going to be continuing to working on moving forward, is really building out that team. And as I mentioned, we're data-driven. Good science underpins good data, and good data underpins great therapy. So that's something we take very seriously. And for all those reasons, we do see that we are set for growth. We are the only company on the ASX with an iNKT cell therapy platform. And for our second technology from MD Anderson, we're the only company in the world that's working on that particular technology. So in terms of our corporate overview, we're currently valued at about $16 million with $8.1 million cash as of the end of March this year. So we don't think that reflects A, the value of the technologies that we've got in the company, or B, the team that we've managed to build around those technologies. It was pleasing, though, that earlier in the year we've had Merchant Group join our register. They are now our largest shareholder. Again, they've had success investing broadly, but also particularly in biotech, so wonderful to have them on board. And we do have a number of other small institutional and high net worth investors on the register, but always looking for more people that understand the time frame, time horizon, risk appetite for a biotech investment, but of course the returns that can come with that. And as I said, in a word, what we're actually looking at, it's a problem that we all know well, it's cancer. And the reason we all know it well is because in 2020 there was an estimated 19.3 million cancer cases. It continues to be a leading cause of death. And of course that for us provides the motivation to do something about it to the point where we're actually looking at cures. And for the type of therapy that we work on, they're called biologics, and that market is expected to reach about $143 billion by 2026. So again, big opportunities in terms of making a difference, but also commercial returns. And more specifically, the type of therapy that we work on, it's called a cell therapy, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. And another way that they're often referred to is called CAR T. And the reason that they are so interesting and really at the leading edge right now is because we're starting to use the word cure when we talk about cancer. And so that's what I'm showing here on the right. One of the participants that was dosed with these types of therapies 10 years ago in the pioneering clinical trials is now cancer-free 10 years on. So it's remarkable that we are using that word cure in the context of this disease. And again, another example here, this is Emily Whitehead, one of the first children to take cell therapy, and again, 10 years on, she's also cancer-free. Just reiterating that we are in a wonderful position where we're now talking about this in terms of cure. So I'd just like to give you a quick overview of our pipeline of assets. So our lead asset is ALA-101. That's the technology we licensed from Imperial College, and we're using that to target a particular form of blood cancer that produces something that's called CD19. and Ella-104, which we licensed from MD Anderson Cancer Centre, that we're using to target cancers called multiple myeloma, but also potentially solid tumours. Now, we also have an oral spray platform in the business where we reformulate drugs from solid dose form into oral spray, and it's pleasing to note that our most advanced product, Zolpimist, was actually the commercial launch was announced this morning, so that's exciting for the company as well and generates a little bit of cash or revenue, which is great. So I'd just like to talk more about the iNKT cell therapy platform itself. So this is the way the therapy works. We actually take a healthy donor, we take a blood sample and we isolate the immune cells. So they're the natural killers in our body that eliminate anything that's foreign. We take those cells and we actually genetically modify them. And we put something on the surface here that's called a chimeric antigen receptor, or CAR for short. And that actually is used to target those cells to find it and kill the cancer cells. And what we do then is we actually grow them up into sufficient numbers, billions, and then when a patient's actually ready to take the therapy, it can be taken out of the freezer and given to that particular patient, where the cells will go in and actually kill the cancer in that particular patient. So why we're so excited about our iNKT cell platform, as I mentioned, the original therapy was based on what we call T cells. We can actually use this to give from one healthy person to another. The other therapies rely on the use of a patient's own immune cells and their own blood, which becomes incredibly complicated from a supply chain point of view because every therapy for every patient needs to be made bespoke. So it's very cost ineffective and also prone to errors as well. In addition to that, iNKT cells are one of the most potent immune cells. Once they're activated in a body, they actually recruit other components of our immune system to fight against the cancer. And also we've got data that shows quite nicely when cancers also produce something called CD1D, that our cells and our platform performs better than the conventional cell therapies. So I'll just explain this data. It's probably a little bit different to a lot of the mining charts that we look at, but I'll go through this just high level. And what I'd like to address is two major points. The first is that for our therapy, we actually see much faster killing of the cancer. In this case, this is in a mouse model, so we do the testing in animals. So what we're looking at here is animals that have been dosed with a particular form of cancer. Anywhere you see the colour, that's the cancer cells in the body. And then what we're looking at the bottom two rows is actually 3 days after the particular forms of treatment. So when we look at the second last column, we're looking at the conventional type of cell therapy that are already approved, and the ones that I mentioned have been used for those patients that are now cancer-free. If we look down after 3 days of treatment, it's very clear that the cancer still persists in those animals, and it has reduced a little bit, but not a lot. And this is our therapy in the very last column here. What we see is after 3 days, it's quite striking that the cancer has been completely eliminated. So what it tells us is that our therapy is working much faster to actively and aggressively remove those cancer cells. And so that's really important, but what we need to know is, does it actually help the animals live longer? Ultimately, we want that to translate to the humans. And so what we're looking at here, it's called a survival curve, where on the vertical axis, we've got the number of animals that are still alive, and we're looking at over time. And so again, in the orange line, that's the conventional type of therapies, and at about 90 days is about 60% of the animals still alive, versus our therapy, it's upwards of 95%. So we're getting A, faster killing, and B, we're getting better activity and long life for those particular animals. And onto our second therapy, again, just a little bit more data, just to show the technology that we licensed from MD Anderson. So this is again, it's a target that goes after a cancer called multiple myeloma. And what has been done already is this technology has been used in conventional T cells, not our platform yet. And that's what I'm showing here. So we've got 3 different versions of multiple myeloma. And what we see this is the same survival curve where we're looking at the animals that are alive and how long they're alive for. The black line in all 3 is the animals that have not been treated. And we see that between 30 and 40 days, they have all succumbed, versus the red line, which is our technology. Out to 50 and 60 days, everyone is still alive. Again, highlighting that this is a great target for us to go after. Now, we expect that when we combine it with our iNKT cell platform, for the reasons that I showed earlier, we expect it to be a better performing product. And I haven't shown it, but there's also data for this to work in lung, pancreatic, and breast cancer as well. So in terms of the next steps, major goal for both these therapies is to advance them into clinical trials as quickly as possible. To do that, we have a series of important steps. First is manufacturing of the drug for the lead candidate. Then we speak to the regulators and perform the work that they dictate that we need to. Then we get clearance to do the clinical trials before finally dosing a patient in a phase 1 clinical trial. So these trials don't require healthy volunteers, they go straight into patients to see if they're active. Also for our second technology, we've got a little bit more work to do to confirm that we're happy with the target, combine it with our iNKT cell therapy platform before testing it in a range of cancers before defining the manufacturing strategy. And I'd just like to give you a bit of an overview on the landscape of these types of therapies, because it has been and it continues to be an enormous area of investment, and despite the headwinds that we've all seen across the small cap sector and biotech in particular, there has been some notable transactions in this field, primarily because of the promise that these technologies hold. So there's a number of multi-billion-dollar acquisitions that have taken place. What we're seeing now is a lot of strategic partnerships with large pharmaceutical companies, where even preclinical stage companies like ours are entering into billion-dollar strategic partnerships. And over the course of 2021 and 2022, we've also still seen a number of significant capital raises, again demonstrating that there is, despite the headwinds, there's still an appetite for investment in this sector. And specifically for cell and therapies globally, we're expecting this market to reach about just under $13 billion by 2026. So more specifically, because the market is dominated by the conventional T-cell therapies that I mentioned and other types, and there's hundreds of those and hundreds of clinical trials. And this is a snapshot of the handful of companies worldwide that are working on a similar platform to ours. And all in the last 12 months, they've had varying degrees of commercial activity, but Appia raised $52 million and then entered into an $875 million partnership with Kite. And again, that's a company that's preclinical and not expected to reach clinical trials until 2023. And also Cure was acquired for $185 million total deal value. And Mink raised $40 million, currently valued at $54 million, but again, they all dwarf Arovella, valued at $16 million, and that's all US-based valuations of this side as well. So considering we've got two world-class technologies and a world-class team, we do expect that there's opportunity for us to grow. And just to quickly finish on the team, so our chairman is Paul Hopper. He's got a wonderful reputation in the biotechnology sector. Myself, I have a PhD scientist by background, followed by drug development and venture capital before joining Arovella. Deborah is Chief Medical Officer of Charisma Therapeutics, a well-known cell therapy company in the US. Dr. Liz Stone is formerly an Associate Professor at Cornell University, now an Executive Partner at a well-known biotech venture capital fund in the US, MPM Capital. And our two latest recruits, both 15-year plus veterans of the cell therapy space, to make sure we're moving in the right direction. And I'd just like to finish there and say thanks again to the organisers, and thanks everybody for your attention and for listening today. Appreciate it.